Good evening. Sorry, I'm a couple of minutes late. Just checking both feeds are going out on the Tube of You and the Book of Face. So both, I think, going live now. Um, I think the connection looks like it's okay as well. So fingers crossed everything's going all right. Um, Fingers crossed. I will just check on my phone just to make sure everything is going ahead. But the purpose of doing this is the handicap entries have come out now. We have that little window in between where the entries come out and before the weights are revealed for the Irish horses, we have that window where we can assess each race, make a bit of a short list of horses we like, and then potentially earmark a handful of those Irish horses we might like. So say for the Ultima, for example, there was 3 British and 3 Irish on your shortlist. When the BHA handicapper comes up with the Irish marks, if those 3 Irish horses have been given a stiffer mark than you would have probably given them yourself, then maybe that might sway it in favour of your British runners and vice versa. Sorry, I've got a beer, so I'll get that to wet the whistle. But yeah, basically the point of it is I go through this. I haven't done it the last few years, to be honest. I've been so swamped with everything else. Obviously, do a day job, family life, trying to put out content for Cheltenham. I've just been a bit up against it the last couple of years. Whereas this season, being at home, I mean, I'm not really much freer. I've had broken leak in the kitchen this morning, and I'm absolutely swamped with the day job. But not complaining. I want to go through these handicaps. I was hoping to get a bit more preparation done for you guys, just because it just makes it easier to talk, doesn't it? If I'm, fully prepared and probably the content comes out a little bit better. But oh well, bear with. You'll have to just take it as it comes. So I like to waffle. I'll try not to do that. What we'll be doing for this evening is I'll share the screen that shows the Racing Post Cheltenham Festival homepage. I'm sure you guys have all seen it. Really nice and exciting the way that it's all staggered out. But then I can skip through each of the races and talk about the horses that I like. If I need to, I can come back and you can see my beautiful face. But I'll just reiterate, handicap weights will be, officially they should be Tuesday and then it might be leaked Wednesday. We should get them. Some people are talking about Monday being a date. I don't think that's it personally, but could be wrong. But basically, there's going to be a small window where weights could come out. Now, you've got to be careful with it because you don't want to go too gung ho and just horses come out of what looks apparently a lenient weight and then just back it because everyone else is a sea of blue on odds checker. Lots of horses that have had entries for certain races, like your Grand Noir for a Coral Cup, they've already been backed in. Now, his mark had sort of been given when he came over from Musselburgh. If that isn't touched, um, then the people that have got into him early would be probably fairly happy. And if he does get an increase, then the people that backed him might want to trade out or do something with it. Not saying they would, but just an example. Now, when the weights come out, there's no excuse for any of us to have not looked at the races, other than time, of course, or inclination to actually do it. We should be given an idea of the horses that we like and the sort of mark they should be getting. Now, there is just a generic UK tax that people will say £3 or £4 you'd expect the British handicapper to give them, which is that's okay if you want to do like a loose assumption on it. And obviously, you don't have to look at them in advance. You can look at them after the BHA handicap has given it. You can reassess things up to the meeting. You can back the day before, back on the day of it, can't you? But I'm just thinking from an advanced perspective, before you know that actual number that the BHA handicapper is going to give, which is just an opinion, I think it's important to whittle down some of the races and try and form an opinion of your own. Two things that it will do is one, it will give you a bit of an indication. If you're right on every single one, well done, BHA handicapper. If you're wrong on loads of them, after the performances at Cheltenham, maybe you want to reflect and think, oh, maybe I was a bit too keen on this line of form, or this bit of back form looked a bit better than it was. And then again, it can help us for going forward. And obviously, ultimately, if you haven't got the inclination, you don't really want to do it that way, or you don't feel confident enough to do it, then hopefully the way that I'll show you that I might go through some of the races, I won't be able to do every single race in depth and tell you what I think the marks of horses should be, things like that. Because again, if I tell you what I think the mark of a horse will be, it's very difficult for you to forget that number in your head and to not be steered by it a bit. So we'll do a couple of examples of races and the sort of things I'm looking for. But I'll just wait for the handicap of those marks to come out. Anything that, I don't know, let's just say I've made a horse a 150 horse and then BHA handicapper only gives it £3 rise, so it's a 143 horse. Like they'd be almost auto bets for me. But potentially these ones that you've got on your shortlist that you think this could be well in, you might want to back a little bit prior to the weights, see how you want to play it. I probably will be trying to sit tighter a bit this year. I don't mind losing a few points this time round. Just wait for things on the day, especially with grounded stuff. Now we're getting so close. Excuse me. It's getting dry, Obviously, the ground was soaked and sodden so bad that we had to skip 2 meetings. I mean, one was cold weather than anything else, but it's just not saying we want to wait and see the first day of the ground, but you want to see a bit nearer the time to see what the going reports are. Probably for the handicaps, it can be a bit more relevant than others. And given we've had such a wet winter and bad conditions all year round, there's going to be some horses in here that are very, or potentially going to be very well handicapped if the ground came round the right way. So again, whether you've got the inclination to do it, whether you've got whether you can be asked to do it, basically, then fair enough. If you're watching this, then appreciate it that I'm not the font of all knowledge, but I appreciate that you guys will probably want to hear my thoughts on a few of the races. So I'm going to do exactly that. And then best news ever is Jamie Wren's going to join me next week. Now he's decent on the handicaps. We did pretty well at Dublin Race Festival. I had a forecast global equity win it, and heaven help us in one of the races, big prices. He gave up a couple of handicap horses that he liked as well. So like he's very good at it, and he's had lots on his radar from a far way out in the season. So basically, when the weights have been published, we're going to do a proper review of every single handicap race, and I'll be telling you my short list of horses in there, depending on ground, things like that. And you'll get them all there, literally explicitly mentioned by both of us. So if that's going to interest you, then that'll be coming out probably next week, hopefully, maybe. Just trying to find where I can fit it all in. And then obviously on the days, I'll try and get write-ups done. Now, I might not actually do the write-ups. I think this year videos will just be easier because I won't be travelling to and from the course. So might just do a video on the day. The boy will be in preschool. I've got time before racing. So I might even do a morning show or something to review yesterday's racing and go through it. That's all to be confirmed. But the point of this is handicaps, Dave. So shut up and let's just get on with it. So we're going to skim back to the racing post page. Any questions, comments, things like that come up, because I've got it on Facebook and I've got it on YouTube. I'm going to be ignorant again and just say, like, I'll pick those bits and pieces up after. But I would be really, really appreciative if you guys were putting your views underneath of horses that you like in certain races, even if it's the ones that are fairly obvious looking. It's nice to know what other people are thinking because we're all in this together. If someone's got something on their radar, either we've all thought about it, or we should all be thinking about it, or if we haven't, and then it goes in there, it just makes it all nice food for thought. But anyway, we'll just crack on. The Ultimate Handicap Chase. There's one in here that I do already like anyway. It's a British horse, so we know the British mark. Now, we obviously have the festival stats and trends where you look at certain races where Irish horses might do well or British horses might do well. You get races where novices seem to do quite well in those levels of company. And all those bits of pointers that come in, they are very, very helpful. But the best thing you can do is try and steer away from the stats, what I believe, before you start looking at horses, because I think you want to just judge each horse on their merit first, and then you want to see who fits the profile, because you're going to give yourself a short list of a few horses anyway. And obviously some of those trends are going to change this year, given the what's it called, amateur, like jockeys aren't going to come over. So that's the dynamic on those races just goes completely out the window potentially, doesn't it? Someone like Jamie Codd riding in the 4 miler has got to be worth a stone probably compared to some of the other jockeys. Obviously, I mean this with respect, but you know what I'm saying is true enough. So Ultimate Handicap we're up to. Escaria 10, short, because again, another one of those entered in Musselburgh. There was confusion about his BHO mark given the first time up because he'd run on the Sunday, and we don't assess Sunday races until the following week. It was backed for the Kim Muir because his mark was so light. Obviously, this is around about the same trip, albeit on a different course. And he then went up, and now he's too high for the Kim Muir. So I think a lot of people, whether it's non-run or no better what it was, just started hammering him for this as well. And the bookies just had to shore him up, didn't they? Because he was fairly popular. Just to start on him as a horse in here, I would suspect that he would be National Hunt Chase bound. I think he's got a better chance in a National Hunt Chase than potentially this. Now, he does look a nice traditional stay-in chaser, and this is the race that can be like a sort of a springboard for maybe even national type horses. I would just think that he would be better suited to a National Hunt Chase. I think the field size and the way that race will pan out, like he's got enough class to be in the business end for the majority, whereas a handicap like this can be a little bit harsh going, lots of horses around. So anyhow, he's too short anyway. I don't care what happens with him. Cocoa Beach going Irish Grand National. So again, he won before Cheltenham. Matt mentioned that he fancied him. He obviously won just after that. He's where he is in the market off the back of the fact that he's done previous stuff. So again, when these handicap entries come out, or when people think they're plotting a horse, the prices can get smashed up. And at the end of the day, people would have backed these non-run and no bet, but why do you want 25 to 1 Cocoa Beach or 25 to 1 Escaria 10 for these races if they're not going to come here? I'm not saying Escaria 10 definitely won't, but who knows. Now, Lieutenant Rocco, Nick Mitchell. He's got back into the game training. Lots of these, I think it's Sherborne Utilities, are all sort of under his umbrella. He's Grade 1 winning trainer previously. Like, he knows what he's doing with a horse. I like Lieutenant Rocco. He's a horse that's been on my horses to follow from the start of the season. Um, and I did mention in there as well, like, we can skim into it, but he's related to, you'll see, RSA winner, I think it was. I should know this stuff off the top of my head, shouldn't I? Sorry. Sorry for the lack of stuff that's in it. There you go. First lieutenant. So nice staying chaser. Very good course record at Cheltenham. Not that the breeding would always suggest that he's going to batter it round here, but he's already round here. And he ran pretty well. That was Fusey Ruffles, as good as I've seen Fusey Ruffles. The ground was slower than I thought was ideal for him, but he ran a cracker. When he ran at Chepstow on debut, I backed him then, and I thought he ran pretty well, to be honest, although I was semi-disappointed that he wasn't good enough to win off his handicap mark to begin with. Then obviously he goes and does what he does against Messi de Zobo, and then a novice chase. Only the winner can be penalised for it, but he's dotted up for Nesta Park. Now, Nesta Park is a horse I think will be going for the National Hunt Chase. I think he's quite a nice staying type. And although, like, officially rated, Nesta Park wouldn't be blowing you out of the water, I think this was a really, really good performance from Lieutenant Rocco. And I do think that the £7 rise from what his official rating was going into that race to where it is now, I don't think that's too bad, to be honest. I had him at the start of the season thinking that he's going to dot up in a handicap of 139. You're going to be adding £10 to that if they're winning handicaps and doing as you think. The step up in trip was always going to be key to him. Um, and it shows the difference in level of form between there. Now, if you look at Racing Post ratings, if you go by any of those sort of things, you can see his run by Mezza de Zobo was actually pretty decent in terms of Racing Post rating. Top speed was fairly good on there, although I'm a bit like reluctant to use their figures. But even that run prior, where he's behind Fuser Raffles 145, so they're good performances. And I know they're not literal in line with a handicap mark, but I'd say that Lieutenant Rocco could be a 150s horse. Probably deserves to be where he is in the market. And again, with these British horses, we already know their marks. Now, when we start skimming a bit further down, Far Class is going to go for the stable plate. So the moral of this race, I'm just going to quickly go through a few bits. Run Wild Fred's going for the Kim Muir. Now, Milan Native is going to come for this race. Milan Native has been given an official handicap mark for the Grand National. So I know that's based specifically on the discipline of the national fences, and there's a potential chance that the handicapper might decide to swing him about. But Gordon Elliott interestingly made the comments when the weight came out that Milan Native looks like he's off a nice weight there, and I think when he's saying that to us, he's basically confirming that he thinks his mark's fairly nice. Sorry, I know I'm going around the houses a bit to pull this in, but I just want to just show you as it's printed on here, the mark that he's been given, and we can see the point of what I'm about to say. But he was nibbled in. Lots of people backed him. I think he was 50s or something for the race anyway. I've killed myself, haven't I? Hearing it on here. Sorry about the lag and silence, but the point that I'm making here is he's off of a nice mark in the national mark that he's been given. Gordon Elliott's made those comments to suggest that that's a worthy mark for him, or he thinks that's a nice mark. So it could be reassessed. Same as those Musselburgh entries that Gordon Elliott had, they could be reassessed. So bear that in mind. But I'd say if Milan Native gets the same mark as he's got for the national, which I suspect is going to be the case, well, then I think we're looking at probably a short, like a horse that's going to basically shorten up in the betting. So for the Irish horses, Milan Native would be top of my list for the Ultima. And I know I said I wasn't going to do any spoilers for this, but there you go, spoiler. We can see there's lots of other horses that got marks in there. Now, there could be stuff at bigger prices for the Irish horses that might jump in. But again, you need to go through the races and you need to find those ones that might be of interest to you in the first instance. Fullback ruined me this season. Why they went and battered him up in a novice chase to get his mark up when he was rated 127, I think, off his chase debut. He would have dotted up in a handicap, but never mind. Then we're getting to sort of no hope of prices, but you never know what sort of things could happen with them. But you can see predominantly British stuff in there. We know enough about this race anyway. One that I do like in this is Happy Go Lucky. Again, when I talked about ground and things like that, Happy Go Lucky I think is fairly versatile, although he's likes a bit of his toe in. Sam Brown, horses like that that get entered in here, they need like a bog. Needs it wetter than Otter's Pocket, I think. So whether they're going to come here or not, I don't know. Cloth Cap ran so well the last day. Another one that would be interesting for the British runners. But I just think looking at the market, these will have been formed again off the back of people backing them before now. You really want to just be ascertaining which of these races you want to whittle down basically driven by the Irish runners. That doesn't mean neglect all of the handicap races until after, because like I say, we want to know which ones. We've got a short list of Irish and British in there, because if the Irish are penalised, the British then move a little bit further forward. But in this particular instance, Milan Native's already on the short list. Happy Go Lucky's already on the short list. They're both on the back list already anyway, regardless of what marks come out. And I think they're both pretty much confirmed for this race anyway, so that's quite good. Um, we'll move on. I don't want to, again, go in too much depth for every single race, because obviously there's just, well, there could be as much time as we need there to be, really, couldn't there? But I don't want to go for everything and just try and go into too much depth on every race. So we'll talk about the Boodles, and I'll give a few pointers on there. And then some of the races that we're going to go through after, I'll try and just go a little bit quicker, again, just to give you guys a bit of a feel. And then what we'll do is, maybe the Boodles is a good example. I'll try and give a steer on how I'd look at marks and where I think they potentially could be. Now, this is going to be hard. 4-year-old juveniles, they are the trickiest ones doing that. Now, I don't believe there is an actual ceiling for the Fred Winter or the Boodles. I just think like 145-ish, it feels like that's about the mark that people run at. Like if they're any better than that, they normally go for the Triumph. So no one's got to worry about being too high of the marks. Open to be corrected on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Like I say, it just tends to be that the better horses go for the Triumph. Obviously, whatever comes in here in terms of the big dogs, like we've got Zanahiyr and Quilixolos. Now, Zanahiyr going to go Triumph as far as I'm concerned. Quilixolos, he keeps toying with this race, Gordon Elliott. So what mark he's given is interesting, because it's going to set the tone for the rest of the field, because there's no doubt that he would be top weight if he ran in here. But also it gives you an indication of his chance on its own. So basically, if he's overrated, not only is he going to be having to concede more weight to the other horses than he probably should have done in the first place, but he's already handicapped up to the hills. That's going to force Gordon's decision in there to a degree. And then obviously that changes the whole scope of the race for final declarations as what happens to the rest of the field. Because Quilixolos probably could be, I don't want to say £10 clear, but he could be, we should be £5 to £10 clear of anything else in here, I would say. Bar Zanahiyr, I don't think it's going to come. And if he's £10 clear of them, and then he comes out, everything else goes up the weights, and it changes the dynamic a little bit. But I'll just run through the thoughts on some of these I've got in here. Now, Riviere de Tel, Gordon Elliott is going to run as far as I'm concerned. Again, this is very just quick assumptive stuff. Don't just use racing post race. Have a look yourself. But when you look at the marks here, would be something that's running off a little bit of a lighter mark. Now, entries and field sizes make a difference. Some horses don't necessarily get in. Once the handicap press release, which I haven't seen actually come out yet, but there's tables in there that tell you historically the low marks. If not, just go and look at last year's races and see what the bottom number was. It's the best guide you'll get, but you'll get a bit of a feel where they are. If you back a horse anti-post and it's not non-runner no bet and it's balloted out, and what I mean by balloted out is 20 horses can run, for example, and it doesn't get in because it was declared and it was number 24, you get your money back. So don't worry about non-run no bet if you're backing the lightweights in there to take the concession. Just be conscious of it, of the ones that are higher up, and it's their choice not to run in the race. Saint Sam for Willie Mullins, loads of people have had this horse on like sort of their radar for this race. I think this horse is going to be not battered by the handicap, but I reckon this is going to get a fairly harsh mark. We'll skip into that one before I move on to anything else. We'll do Quilixolos and we'll do Saint Sam just as a, for the sake of saying it. So 136 Irish rated. And you look at the fact that this is where the handicap is in a position, isn't he? That he's got Quilixolos and Saint Sam that are both in here. He's got a piece of form here that, in theory, could be taken literally. And by saying that it's going to be taken literally, if we just go by the golden rule that everyone talks about, the £3 or £4 for... I've just realised that my screen's only showing the back end of the Racing Post stuff, not the rest of it. That's a little bit of a fuddler, isn't it? Bear with me, and I'll quickly just see if I can update this while we're on here, so you can see a bit more. But I'll keep talking about this one anyway. Basically, Saint Sam is 136 rated. The 5 and a bit lengths that he was beaten by Quilixolos. If you want to take that very literally, then that makes him 141 Quilixolos. You put the UK tax on £3 or £4 each, you'd make Saint Sam 140. You'd make Quilixolos 145. I've got a feeling that he might make Saint Sam a little bit higher, given the fact that he's run behind Zanahiyr and he's been a little bit eye-catching. But then you go by Racing Post ratings and it could be further down. So Saint Sam would be one that I'd be expecting to be getting spanked by the handicapper. So if Saint Sam came in under anything under 140, I would say that he's off a fair mark. Quilixolos I fully expect to be 145 plus. And then, like I say, off the back of that, that means that Saint Sam, even on that one line of form, which they want to use more than that, but even on that one line of form, pulls those two fairly close. So bear with me. We're live in the game, aren't we? And I'll see if I can do it. Try and pull it back. But there's Cabot Cliffs ran today, didn't he? And he's beat Heroes de Sul, who's a Nicky Henderson horse, for Donnelly. And they fancied that horse a bit, but he was in the Adonis and he didn't obviously run in the Adonis. Um, now, that was probably almost not, I wouldn't say like a tip in itself, but it was probably a bit of a clue that they like it wasn't maybe it wasn't fully wound up for Cheltenham, or maybe didn't think as much of it as maybe it first appeared. But they went for the weaker race. He was getting weight off of his Cabot Cliffs, and he got absolutely battered by Cabot Cliffs. Now that has got a mark of 129. And that's going to be reassessed by the British handicapper as well going into this. I don't know how much they're going to be able to raise him just off the back of a hype horse, which is all that Heroes de Sul is. But we can take a look at Cabot Cliff anyway. But I think he deserves to go up a bit. So I'd say for him, anything low 130s, like if he went up less than £5 or £6, he'd be seriously interested. But again, we're looking at a handicap here, and I'm talking about the horses that are towards the head of the market. So not particularly doing anyone any favours. Right, give me 1 second, and I'm going to see about switching this to just my display, and then we'll go from there. Need to grab my phone up because it's going to look very different on my preview than it will when I actually put it up. This is the beauty with live, isn't it? They say don't work with children or animals, and I think I'm a bit of a child and an animal at heart. So the worst person to work with. Anyway, talk amongst yourselves. Enjoy yourselves out there. Right, if I just going to get Facebook up just to switch this. Sorry, I apologise. What happens when I don't plan stuff because of life getting in the way and taps and stuff, innit? Right, we're going to transition and see. How does that look? It's going to take a few seconds to catch up on the old book face. And what we'll do is we'll pull Cabot Cliffs up and hope that that's in the screen. I feel like it must be. And I don't know how much of a lag there is, but we're going to find out. Oh, it is, isn't it? It's definitely up there now. So basically, I apologise for the previous race where I've been putting up horses talking about it because you wouldn't have seen it, but now you can. Let me just check that this window pops up. Yeah, go on, we're in. So, when I was talking about the last one, basically, St. Sam, sorry for wasting 5 minutes of your life. You can skip that if you want. It's here, isn't it? It's the form within there. Now, the Zanahiyr run before, let's not forget that markets aren't always correct, but let's not forget that he was sent off odds on Fav against Zanahiyr, that we now know Zanahiyr is pretty good. So he's a well-regarded horse. Then he's, I'd say, comfortably beaten by Zanahiyr, but a lot of people, I think, would have made him an eye-catcher there. Like he was almost ridden to get beat. If I'm not saying they did, because surely you'd rather the horse be showing its true potential and then going for a triumph. And then behind Quixelos, it looked a little bit like it. Now, I wonder if this is the type of horse that's just like that. Like, it's going to look like it's got tons more, but maybe it hasn't. Wonder whether some headgear or anything's going to be applied. But I just think St. Sam and Quixelos, those lines of form, probably 145 plus for Quixelos, probably 140 plus for St. Sam. Anything under that for either of those, I'd be prepared to accept, I guess. Cabot Cliffs, we'll pull him up. Obviously, like I say, ran against Heroes de Sul today. We don't think that form was much good anyway. The horse that fell in front actually does run in the Adonis against Trotonic tomorrow. That's on better ground, so that will show us the depth of the form. The Sage Advice win. Now, me and Darryl did a preview for Warwick for this meeting, and we do both quite like this Sage Advice. So we kind of felt that he was lightly marginalised anyway. I don't remember what price they paid for the Sage Advice, but I think Dr. Newland or the owners paid quite a bit for it, a couple of 100,000 maybe, somewhere around that figure. And we like Goodbye Stranger. He's got some decent time figures at Newbury. Not that I'm the man that does the timing, but Darryl tells me, and I trust Darryl. So he's giving £6 away to the Heroes de Sul. We can't use him as much of a yardstick. But then you look down here, the bloody duffel coat getting trounced by this horse, and then it just makes you wonder how and where they're going to mark that horse over here. What I'm trying to say with this is I think the Sage Advice form is pretty good. I don't know how much to trust this Heroes de Sul form. He probably does deserve to go up a few more pounds from it. Again, like I say, not really particularly based on much other than the emphatic nature of his victory. So if he was like 133, you'd sort of take that. Like I say, with the British horses, we're not really looking so much to see him reassess because most won't have run recently. Cabot Cliffs is an exception to that. The fact that he has run recently. Now, I'm just skimming down to look at some of the ones at monster prices to see if there's anything to pick out from the bottom before we go back up, because sometimes there is, Sometimes there's not. So yeah, Honor de Jonc was the one, wasn't it, that fell and probably going to beat Heroes to Seal. That runs in the Adonis tomorrow, so it'll be interesting to see what they do and what they plan to do after. I think it needs slower ground, and it's pretty good ground at Kempton for the Adonis meeting. Sage of Ice, that horse I talked about that was bought and paid for some reasonable amount of money. Obviously was runner-up behind Cabot Cliffs. This is where, not inbred, but the intertwined 4-year-old juvenile form sort of gets very tricky because this isn't a very good run, is it? Um, and then obviously you can then add that into Cabot Cliffs, and you can wonder about the question of the form. The ones that I am interested in myself for this race of the British runners, it's bad to say it out loud, but I still give Hellred, he's an interesting horse to say the least. Simply because at one point he was favourite for the Triumph right at the beginning of the year when me and Darryl did the Chepstow preview. Now, look, I'm not saying that he should be capable of winning a Triumph per se, but his action when he ran at Chepstow suggested that he wants some really bad ground. He didn't really run very well at Wincanton the other day, but that was off the first time wind up. I was off of a reasonable break. They gave him the tongue tie, and let's be fair, it's only a few weeks before Cheltenham. So I don't want to sound too despicable with it, but I do wonder how much they were putting a bit of effort in there. So if it wasn't his true running and they were trying to chance it a little bit, then he'll line up here. If he doesn't line up here, then I think that was a very disappointing run. So he would be interested in, not I wouldn't say full blown forgotten horse, but I think he's probably going to go off a reasonable price. I think he'll be bigger than the price that he is now. I don't think the 14s is much good, to be honest, but we'll have to see. The other Nichols horse, Who Agree, they were very keen on this horse when he came over. They kept putting up videos on Twitter of him working at home. You normally get quite a good vibe from that. And obviously we've got this line of form here. First time up at Chepstow. Stick him in a Grade 1 and he gets absolutely battered. Now, I wonder with horses like this, like he's already won over hurdles, so his novice status is gone for next season. They stick him in a Grade 1 and it just makes me wonder whether they're trying to find out how good the horse is, and they really don't know, or whether they're thinking just let him go get some racecourse experience, and we don't care where he finishes. So I think he's semi-interesting, and Nichols has done quite well in this race previously. So of the British runners, Hugris and Hellred are probably the two that I'm interested in. As I say, Cabot Cliffs is semi-interesting if his mark doesn't go up too much, but then I don't know the depth of the form. Nathalam I talked about a while back. I think his mark's beyond him to be winning this, to be honest. I think he's a nice enough horse, but I can't see him winning it off the mark. Now, Druid's Altar, he's one that Matt's been talking to me about quite a bit. He won the race that Band of Outlaws won before he came and won this particular race. So that's part of the line in, but there's bits of form again in here. Now, he's a well-beaten position here, but if you watch some of the rides and stuff, like, I don't know, Joseph O'Brien wasn't in the greatest of form before. Whether he started to hit a bit of it now, he possibly could be. And I just think like these sort of Grade 2, Grade 3 efforts, regardless of how far he's been battered, you look at the price that they thought he was going to be for it. He won on his hurdle debut. I think there's enough in this horse to suggest that there's more to come, and I don't think his mark is going to work too well for him. The race before then, when he was 122 and he's got a claimer on his back, he won nicely, but he gone up £8 for that by the Irish handicapper. Now the British handicapper, like we say, is going to stick a couple or a few pounds on. I would pencil Druid's Altar as probably no more than a 130-ish horse, but I'm trying to be harsh on these horses because I want to see a bit extra. So if I say this is a 133 horse and he was given 135, that's £2 isn't enough to put me off. If I say he's a 135 horse because I'm being generous to him and saying, oh, he might be better than I think he is, then you're not really giving yourself any scope for improvement. And you really want to be looking for a horse that's best part of half a stone in if you can. So Druid's Altar's definitely on the short list of the Irishy runners. River to Tail for Gordon Elliott looks nice lightweight and the typical sort of plotty bit for it. Quilixolos and Saint Sam, the race really does revolve around the marks that they're going to get and whether they do come here or not. And again, if Saint Sam's battered by the handicapper and goes anywhere near 145, which I mean you don't think it would happen, but who knows, then he potentially could swerve to a Triumph. So you want to be looking at the form of horses and you want to be seeing how much you can trust it. Now, the juvenile ones, as I say, we've seen it a bit intertwined with some runners there. It's hard to get a real strong handle on. What you really need to find is a horse that you know is top draw, and then you want to try and use that as a backyard stick. Like a few years back when Ajali beat King D'Argent at, I want to say Market Raisin, I don't know, it might have been. King D'Argent I thought was actually quite a nice horse, and I felt like he was well handicapped coming into this race. Now, that may have even been the year that Band of Outlaws won it. King D'Argent did run well and ran on late, but the problem is it's finding which of the 5 or 6 well handicapped horses in these races is the best handicapped. And a 4-year-old handicap, I don't even think this should be a race that's at the festival, personally. I feel like they just let them run in the Triumph, that's where it is, because we've not had enough time to find out and be confident enough in what their marks are. So you can have a look through the form and try and get a bit of an opinion of it, but it's going to be tricky with those types of races. We can move on to, we'll do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm going to quickly skim through this because I know that I've been on here for probably half an hour already. And as I say, we've got the preview with me and Jamie next week where we will go in depth and we will talk about the ones we actually fancy. And I'm going to make a list of all the marks for the Irish horses that I liked. And what I'll do when I talk about it with you next week is I will tell you the marks that I thought horses would be. And I'll also tell you the ones that I've crossed off on my shortlist because I think their marks have gone too hard. So I'll elaborate a little bit more. But again, giving you a bit of a feel of this is a nice weekend to just skim through some of the races, give yourself a little shortlist in your iPhone. Whenever you've got some time, have a look at 1 or 2 of those horses, then give yourself a bit of a feel of what you think their mark should be by the British handicapper. Oh, don't do this to me, Racing Post. But I mean, this probably, well, the last window when I was fixing the screen would have been a good time for letting some questiony bits come in, wouldn't it? So again, multiple entries is something that I talk about for the graded stuff for the novice hurdlers. Now it gets a bit clearer nearer the time, but multiple entries at the festival, you've got to be very careful about them because some of them are similar distances. There's stable comments that come out, or the stable tools that Racing Post publish and gets copied onto other websites as well. They're really, really good bits of information. Now, again, there'll be horses in here that have caught the eye somewhere or been put up by somebody, and they've already shortened up in the market, which is why they are where they are. And this is where I think the value angle, the closer we get to the festival, the more you should just wait until how much you fancy the horse. And again, on the day as well, things that have been backed in might drift out. There's plenty of liquidity in like the Betfair exchanges, so you can get reasonable bets on. You can trust the market, I think, a bit on there as well. For the Coral Cup, there is a few that are worth mentioning in here. And you can see when we start looking towards the head of it. Now, Allard was as an aborted chase season this year. He could be going back over hurdles, which could be interesting given the fact that his hurdle mark on here is £9 lower. Now, I believe it's based on the amount of time that it's been since they last ran. So I don't feel like he should be getting reassessed from my own personal bit, just because of the fact that he dotted up in a chase. But again, open to be criticised in there. But again, it's horses like this. Like if Allard was in here around about his handicap, his hurdle mark, and he looked well in on his chase performance, then fair enough. But you don't really want to be putting his mark up to 150s and rating him off of the back of chase form. See what I mean? And he did run well enough in the Supreme, didn't he, for a long way, and it was a bit of a messy race. We'll see, but he's one that's going to be interesting that's coming in here. But we can see there's lots of Irish in and around it. Now, Kashari, Darrell mentioned him. Put him up at the Dublin Race Festival. I think he fancied him a bit. Ran really eye-catchingly. It's just whether he comes over or not, I guess, would be the question. But I think he put him up at 25 or 20s, just on Twitter, not like as a tip or anything, just saying this is one that I've got an eye-catcher, I got it requested. So the money has come for Kashari. And I think a lot of people have seen the same thing, like eye-catching, finishing behind. Whether he's passing slow horses or what it is, who knows. But what he gets rated over here is going to be the pivotal thing. And again, with the BHA handicappers, they will be looking at more than just one race, but they are going to be looking at those performances, like if something's been cosily ridden. So we'll just have to see. 144 is his Irish mark. You can see even there from Race Post ratings, they're saying that he ran to about that mark. As I say, there's the touch of him being fairly eye-catching in behind. You'd think he's got to be 150. At least close to that, and again, it's the £3 or £4 that they might put up. So if he's under 150, that's not me saying he's well in. I just think that they're probably going to put him in and around that mark. I feel like he could be the horse that's just crippled by the handicapper. If it was me looking at this particular horse, and I know he was eye catching in behind, and like I say, I'm always trying to be generous with these horses. So what I mean by being generous with them is I'm going to be harsh to what their mark is, and if I'm beneath that, then I'm going to be fairly happy with it. So like I say, there, the 150 for Kashari, it's me almost being harsh with him. So I'd probably say this horse should be about 145, 146, if I'm being honest, because it was, as much as it's a nice eye-catching run off the back there, I just think he was picking up other bits of horses, like slower horses. Now it was after a massive break that he came back and won in a handicap hurdle. You'd think the fact that he was rated 140s ish there, as a chaser a couple of years back, or a few years back now, and the fact that he's matured and a stronger horse, he should potentially be better than that sort of mark. But I'd be reluctant to say that this horse is better than his peak as it stands. But again, these are Irish ratings coming over here, so he's more than likely to get about 150. Very interesting horse, there's no doubt about that. Now, Esquilane's entered all over the shop, a horse that lots of people would have been looking forward to stepping up in trip this season. Now, Gordon has got him in the Martin Pipe where he's been supported. Gordon could run a few in there. There's a few that, when we get to that race, that would get mentioned. But the only time they stepped up in trip, he was very disappointing, and there's no getting away from that. I wonder whether it's part of all the elaborate plot to get him looking better than he is, or whether he actually is just a bit poor. Now, Gaboneko, that does go in the Martin Pipe. Whether Esquilane definitely comes across or not, I don't know. But obviously, bumper horse, you'd think they'd want to run around at the track again, and I do think he's a bit plotty. But Gaboneko is also going to run in the race, so we can go all the way back to their level of form. I know I've moved on from the Coral Cup to the Martin Pipe, but 2.5 mile-ish in it. This is the thought process that I will swill myself into. We look at Gaboneko's more recent form, and again, we go back to that race. Esquilane was odds on. Gaboneko was a bigger price, as in what the expectations were of that particular race. So Esquilane's potentially underperformed, Gaboneko's potentially overperformed, but it's what they've maybe done since there. He's all the way up to 138, Gaboneko, and Esquilane is 133, I think we were looking at. The £5 difference there, literally off that line of form, especially when we talk about stepping up and trip. Be balmy, wouldn't it? It'd be balmy to see this Esquilane getting weight off of Gaboneko as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see what the handicapper does with him, because he may take into consideration with this. So where there's a £5 gulf in Irish marks, I would not expect that to be the case over here. I know they're going to take the recent runs in there as well, but they're also going to be knowing that Gordon Elliott hacks up in the handicaps at Cheltenham, and the same for Willie Mullins. So whether they're going to keep giving him chances or not, I don't know. But they're sort of ones that are interesting. I'd like Esquilane to only be 135 for the Martin Pipe personally, or maybe a tiny bit higher. I think he could easily be 140s in terms of actual ability. Gaboneko, obviously, there. I'd like them two to be around about the same sort of mark, I think. And if they were about the same sort of mark, I'd be tempted to back them. But that would be with the pretense that Esquilane doesn't exceed 140. Just a weird way that I'm looking at it. Great White Shark could be coming in here. Column of Fire, people were thinking Potemps. For him, he was entered up in a few qualifiers. It didn't quite pan out that way for him. So he's in the Coral Cup, which I think a few people have backed. But he's still in that Martin Pipe that he fell in last year. So again, we're talking Gordon Elliott plans, where they're going to go with horses. A lot of that's going to maybe depend on what the handicapper does with it, but I don't know. It's because of the fact that he wants to step up and trip in it. He's interesting wherever he goes, so his mark's going to be eagerly anticipated by lots of people. Now, Bachus was a horse I put up for this race last year as a lively outsider, I believe. If not, then shoot me. I'm sure I gave him a good mention anyway. He ran pretty well, to be honest. Fairly eye-catching off a typical Patrick Mullins out the back ride. He won't be there to ride, will he? So we might have a better jock on in terms of giving the horse a chance in the race. But you can see there after that, he's gone on, I know, chasing some of it, but he's gone on and recorded 4 victories off the back of that. Now, what the handicapper is going to do with his mark is open to interpretation, and open to debate, probably the better way of saying it. Look, he's 10 now, so I'm just scrolling up so you can see that I'm not just making up as I go along. I thought he had a chance of his mark last year, and I think he ran well off his mark last year. And if you look at the form he's coming into it compared to last year, you'd argue that he's actually in better form. Now, this is a horse that handles any ground. The trip, I think, is probably ideal for him. I think others might say that he probably wants a little bit shorter these days, but no, I think the trip's fine for him. If he was anywhere close to 148 again, I'd be keen to back him. But again, it's going to come down to a price point as well. So if he's 148 this year, and he was 33 to 1 last year on ground that would have suited. And this isn't the top price necessarily that's up here, but say he was 148 and he was 33s last year and he's 16s now. That doesn't mean I'm not going to back him because he's not the price that he should have been. I thought he was too big last year. It'd be very, very interesting if he stays in and around the same mark. What the British handicapper does with him, I don't know. They weren't harsh to him last year, which is why I quite liked him. But obviously he's coming into this race off the back of victories, whereas last year he wasn't. So he's a nice horse just to get a feeler of what the handicapper's doing for whether it's Willie Mullins or what. Anything under 150, Bachuson's interesting, but I pray that he's still 148 because I give him a real nice chance in there. Then we've got other horses that are coming in. Obviously, Maze Runner, I guess he'd be on a lot of shortlists because he did win that race that Kashari was in, and he's only a youngster. Um, when we're looking at the handicap marks, we looked already at Kashari being mid 140s. Now, the amount of weight difference between him and that horse, it wasn't fully 2 stone, I don't think, but it's somewhere in and around 2 stone. That's £28 worth of it. So you're saying this horse is already on its Irish rating 153 would be the equivalent for Kashari. That means Kashari would be £6 higher than what I was suggesting for his Irish mark, because that's 147 at the moment, which means this horse potentially could go up £6 off the back of that. So basically, all in all, 140-ish for Maze Runner is what you'd expect the horse to get. If they're any more lenient than that, than like sort of sub 140s, then even more so he would become of interest. The slight caveat with him is that win was over 3 miles. And I know it's going to be a test at Cheltenham, they're going to go fast. He was obviously carrying a tiny weight there. It's just going to be very different conditions: track, trip, weight, pace. So he wouldn't be one for me, I don't think. I probably think there'd be other ones that I'd be more interested in and around the same sorts of prices. Now, who was the one that I was talking about for this? Grandois, wasn't it? There we go. So I guess this hasn't refreshed to sort the prices out of it, but Grandmoire was entered up at Musselburgh for Gordon Elliott when he was trying to get those marks visioned out by a few of them. Now, this horse was Million in Mind partnership and it was sold. I can't remember what the fee was. I'm sure it's like 400 grand this was sold for. But last year when he was a juvenile, like he was a very, very smart horse. The sort of horse I suspect would have gone and dotted up at Aintree. And I would have expected as a novice, or at least juvenile novice, I would have expected him to have reached around about the 150 mark in the UK anyway. So we're forgetting that he's run this season. Now the fact that he's run behind Beacon Edge has made that form look good, going and beating Fury Road the other day. Decent victory there, regardless of who he's beaten. Decent victory in terms of how he went and did it. And Bachus, like I was talking about there, he's in some fine form, Bachus. And he bumped into one there. The trip for Grandmoire, he needs the trip. We know about juveniles when they step up the next season. That Galway run there again, he's been beaten by a decent horse in Beacon Edge. That was his first run for the yard. You don't know how much effort and time and all that sort of stuff, like how much has gone into him for that first run. I can't remember when the sale date was, but it was the summer of last year. It was obviously COVID and stuff, so he can't have been in Gordon's Yard for more than a few months. So you'd probably say if that race was rerun now, could he beat Beacon Edge getting £5? Probably thinking he'd have a chance, you know. And Beacon Edge is a nice horse. So, all of this said, anything light of 150 for Grandois is a mark to take full note of. And I fully expect him to be prominent in the bet, in which he is. And I fully expect him to be popular after the weights come out. If the British handicapper wants to do not the right thing, because we want to have a bet on him, didn't we? But if he wants to do the right thing, he should be putting this horse up to 152 minimum, I think, because you don't really want to be handicapping horses on their potential. Like I'm saying, he probably would have gone and dotted up at Aintree. But like I say, this Beacon Edge line of form, just simply put, you get the weight for age allowance the previous year. So this was back in October last year. So he would have got his weight for age allowance, which is fine. And the point of the weight for age allowance and the reason you lose it halfway through the season is you'd expect the horse to be a better horse later on in the season. So forget the fact that he was getting the £5 from him there, because, as I say, as the season goes on, you'd expect him to be able to bridge that gap anyway in terms of normal ability. Beacon Edge, I think his run was Sunday, so technically he hasn't been reassessed just yet because Irish Handicap is the same as us. Sunday ones get done the week after, but he's 154 there. And again, British handicapper, they're going to put a few pounds on top of that. I just think if you literally take Beacon Edge's Irish mark and you say that that would be the top line for Grandois, that's where I think he should be. Like, I think he probably should be that sort of mark. So if he's going to go and win a county hurdle off of 152, he needs to be a 160s horse, potentially. And I think he probably could be in our terms, British terms of handicapping. So yeah, that's the sort of vibe and feel I get of him. I think he's got a nice chance, but again, it depends what the handicapper does with him. And like I said, I see sense in him giving him a high mark. Racing Post ratings are fairly high as well, so anything sub 150 for Grandmoire, I'd quite like. There's a few other ones in here that, again, I'm not going to mention everything. Wide receivers in the Martin Pipe as well. And Golo's probably going to be going Ballymore or Albert Bartlett, Woody says, if he does travel over. Very interesting trainer comments, because he needs to stick this horse in a bloody handicap. And if he's talking about that slyly, oh, we'll only go to the Ballymore or the Albert Bartlett if he goes over, and then he sticks him in a handicap, that tells me he's holding on to something. Now, this horse is only 137, but again, there's just some bits of form in here where I think he's run pretty well. Make Good, when it first stepped up to 3 miles, ran really well. That's not coming over for Cheltenham. I think he's picked up a bit of an injury, but I know it's different trips. But this Make Good, he's a pretty nice horse in his own right. And Ngolo did do him over 2 miles. Now, I do think good 3 mile novice hurdlers need to have 2 mile pace. So again, while it's over a different trip, I think it's fair to say that Ngolo's. I'm just saying that I think Ngolo's at least as good as Make Good. Like I say, I know they've achieved these at different levels, but there you go, 138-ish. So he's in and around about the right-ish Irish mark based on that. Only a couple of lengths behind Ballyadam, and I thought he ran pretty well there, to be honest. And I think he's the sort of horse, when he ran in that, I was thinking handicap when they go real fast for him will suit. Um, so I think Ballyadam's, well, he's got to easily be in the 140s. Just feel like this horse, I would probably ceiling him at 145 at the moment, but anything sub that, I think he's obviously only so well in compared to where he is. I'd kind of half hope that the fact that Willie said he's going Ballymore Albert Bartlett, it's all mind games and the handicaps could be nice to him. If he was anything 140, so not like all the way up to 149, like say he was 140, 142, I'd be seriously interested in Golo for here because he needs to step up in trip as well. So 2 mile 5, I think, would be absolutely ideal for this horse. Another one again, shortlistish. We'll see what they do with the mark. But he's one that I know we're saying the generic £3 or £4, but I'd quite happily say that he's worthy of more than that in terms of his mark. And obviously, these official ratings, they are just someone's opinion. The British handicap, you'd like to trust that they're going to go through all the right avenues to put the right and an accurate mark on there, but it's just their opinion. So you need to form your own to be able to compare it against it, and also you need to factor in the plots that have come in. It's also worth me reiterating, I didn't really iterate it in the first instance, but Gordon Elliott and Willie Mullins are the ones that we dotting up in these handicaps. You'll see that in the betting anyway, but when you're looking at your shortlist for some of the Irish runners, obviously your Henry de Bromheads, Noel Meads, you do still want to pay attention to them, but just realise that Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott's are going to have been setting up horses for these. These are the ones you probably want to be making more of a note for their mark than any. And you'd have already seen there that some races are going to require more attention looking at them than others. And again, if you looked at trends to see where Irish runners do better in certain handicaps, that will probably steer you to realise which races you might need to look at more than others per se. So I'm going to very quickly go through these next few races now, just to mention a few horses. This isn't going in the depth that I have done with some of the races before. You can see how long and arduous a task this would be if I was to sit here and literally go for every horse and talk to you about them. But we've covered off a handful of horses there where I could have penciled in some marks for them. So as I say, just maybe do a race whenever you want. Have a look at a few horses. You don't have to do everyone, do you? But just get yourself a bit of a mark. Give yourself a bit of a feel for it. Now, the Grand Annual, this is a game changer as well, again for the stats people, because it's changed course. Didn't mention that with the Boodles, but changed course in it. So, not saying the stats potentially shouldn't be exactly the same, but it being a different course, it may lend itself to a different profile of horse. Like it will suit horses differently running around this track as opposed to the Friday track. I've got a very little opinion in this race as it stands. I would be more than happy to wait for the handicapper to assess the lot of them, and then I'd potentially want to work back on it. Now, you want to have some horses sort of on your radar, and Bit is one that lots of people have talked about. I think I'm going to get his other entries up because no point thinking out loud if I can have a look. Yeah, I was going to say it's his only handicap entry that's in here. He looks like he's going to be not penalised per se, but he looks like he's going to get battered from the British handicapper, I think, because I don't think he's much more than the 140s rating that he is here. And I think he's going to get up a few pounds. So he just wouldn't be a horse for me that I'd be interested in. And Tukas is one that runs visibly or visually like he's going quite well. I don't know whether he puts it all in or not. Obviously, it's JP, so you wonder whether they're holding a little bit back or not. But I'm not 100% sold on him. And you get lines of form as well. We saw when I was looking at him bitted, he beat Blackbow. You look here at Tukas getting beat by Blackbow. Now, Blackbow, Willie Mullins has said he's going to go for the Arkle. I think he's ended up in here, possibly. Or at least people were talking about him coming here. He'd be too high mark. I think those bunch of horses, the ones that run against each other, the Irish ones there, they're probably all a little bit too high for my liking. So I'd rather just wait and see what the British handicapper does and look at them in retrospect, because I don't have enough of a confident opinion of any of these horses in the first instance. Like, I've not shortlisted any of these horses for the races. I can see the angle with a few of them, don't get me wrong, but none of them excite me enough to think, well, I want to quickly see if I can beat the bookies price. Couple that would be interesting of the British horses. Tamarok Damatin runs in the Pendle Novices Chase tomorrow. Don't think he'll be coming to Cheltenham, but he's better than 147, I think. So nice enough horse. They're running him up over a further trip, aren't they? So I'd be interested to see what happens with him there anyway. Eldorado Allen I do like. I even thought he had an outside chance for Chaminade last year. That's how mental I am. But I like him. Got ran well enough behind Shishkin before. We know what his mark is there. Now, it may be a little bit high for win purposes, but I suspect he could be interesting at least and sort of there or thereabouts. Sayo for Rebecca Menzies, she's got him back in some flying form, isn't she? A shooter for Paul Nicholls he's put in here. I think that one may be a little bit high in the mark, but he's talking about sort of mapping this race out for him. And I think Paul Nicholls has done okay in this race previously. Ballywood, just looking at the names of horses in here now, would be semi-interesting. I think it was Dynamite Dollars he ran up behind a couple of years back. So we are going a little bit further back. He looks a horse that wants better ground. We'll see from the times that he's running there that he's been going on quicker stuff. So if the festival comes up a bit quicker, he's going to be suited by it. And you'll look at his chase rating here. There's the Dynamite Dollars run. That was when he was a novice. That was 137 he was rated there. You can see he went all the way up to 147 and he's now down to 139. I just feel like that is light enough of a mark to make him very interesting here, especially if the ground came up quite nice. The quicker the ground is, the better his chance. Whether this would be his favourite track and whether I'm just reading to something that might not be there, but like he's the sort of horse that's kind of in my radar for this thing. But again, I don't have enough of a strong enough opinion to go into it. We'll skim through to Thursday because the Potemps is always interesting. Now, the Potemps is obviously the qualifier scenario where we see horses that are eye-catching, third, fourth, things like that. There's got to be someone out there that's banged out some stats about where horses placed and how they performed at the festival, like horses that finished fourth, how many of them went on to win, etc., etc. But I mentioned it a few times on some other stuff. You probably wouldn't have watched that, but if you go onto the YouTube channel and you saw some of the stuff before, I mentioned that I like Champagne Platinum. I think his pound rise is definitely manageable. Admittedly, he is fouled for the race now, but I think he deserves to be. Boss's Oscar's been on everyone's list for a long time. Again, the actual mark that he gets will be interesting. So he was part of the Musselburgh lot, was given a mark. We'll see what he comes out of. I can't remember. I think 151 or something like that he was given, but I like Champagne Platinum. I still think of his mark's good, and he was well back for the Kim Muir last year, wasn't he? All they ran pretty shit. So I like him. Come on, Teddy. I think people are saying that he may struggle to get in, and I think they wanted to run him again before Cheltenham. Whether that was to get his mark up to come here, but I don't know. But like he's a nice horse. Rhinestone's really interesting. I put him up in the Albert Bart the year Milano Indo winners, the lively outsider, and he was messing about in the prelims. So whether Cheltenham gets too much for him, I don't know. But it's nice to see him back, a horse of potential anyway. I really do like Champagne Platinum in this. It's hard for me to swerve away from him. And then obviously the Boss's Oscar, the plot, and the fact that it's Gordon Elliott makes you want to think twice, doesn't it? Dallas Depicton's interesting. It's just Gordon Elliott more than anything, isn't it? So yeah, I'd say Champagne Platinum. I'm pretty happy with my ticket on that, and I still don't think he's a bad price now personally. But the Irish, you just got to try and feed them in, isn't you? And then how does the handicapper want to assess them? Does he want to assume that everything's not trying like we always do for it? Minefield, isn't it, the Potemps? You probably want to have an opinion before the marks come out anyway, and just go with your gut. I'd say if you just trust what the British handicapper's given him and ride with it. Especially if you think they've got something in hand, then potentially he's going to be giving him a nice enough mark. So Far Class I mentioned will be coming here. I like Far Class. Again, well found in the market, so it's not really like I'm saying anything that anyone else doesn't know. Excuse me, just taking a swig. Phil's Dooleries that made Envoy at least get asked a tiny bit. Will be interesting to see what sort of mark he comes over here with. Lots of these other horses are potentially going other places. Not too much jumps out in this race. I do think that Far Class deserves to be where he is. So it's boring in it. Just mention the horse that's there. Phil's Doolery will be semi-interested, but again, fairly well found in the market anyway. This would be the sort of race again, unless there was someone that I'd looked at throughout the season that I thought was mapped out for this. I'd probably wait till the weights have come out and then work it out in retrospect. Middle distance races, bar the Close Brothers Novices Handicap Chase, which has now been removed from the circuit. The middle distance races, I kind of feel like your better horses can win over 2, 2.5, and 3. I'm not saying you need to do that, but the two, like the full roundup mile, so a 2 miler will do really well at 2 mile and probably do like as well or do okay at 2.5. Really good 3 miler and obviously do really well at 3 miles and then be all right dropping back. The ones that really excel at the middle trip are sort of caught in between. Someone like a Super Sunday, and you just wonder whether they are triplets or whether they're just not as good as sometimes they look. So this would be typically the sort of race where I'd want to wait till the weights have come out after. Again, I might make a little bit of a shortlist, but I wouldn't be stressing myself on a race like this. I'd wait to see the marks, do it in retrospect, and again, stable tours and comments that have come out, a few people would have been in on horses before those odds have shrunk because Fire Class is tiny now, isn't they? Do you like Fire Class though? Give them a chance. This is where block bets can be interesting as well. I know I've talked about them before, but 8-1 the field. If you fancy a few at the head of the market, just stick a few of them in a block bet. Back a couple of races on the spin, stick some doubles on because 2 8-1 winners paying 60 odd quid. If you put 3 in each race, that's 9 bets. So costing you, you're sort of getting 13-2 for the double if both of them come in. Worst things happen at sea, didn't they? Anywho, Kim Muir, Run Well Fred, definitely looks interesting for this. It's interesting as well to see how Longhouse Poet will go in the National Hunt Chase before. I think that's where he's going to go because there'll be a form boost to this. Hold the Note, I still don't believe that he wants Trip. We do quite like Lebrun as a horse. Shantou Flyer will be very, very interesting coming in here. And I think this is where he's coming as well. So, again, I know we're talking Irish, looking at marks and stuff. So Shantou Flyer is a horse that I love anyway. Now, the comeback run, I think a few people would have been a little bit annoyed with the fact that he got beat because he looked well in. His run came on the Saturday, so he has been reassessed since. So you'll see there, 20th. And he's 141 as his chase mark now. Now, you go back to when it makes me so sad. When he nearly won the Ultima, I picked him up that day as well, ruined me. I really thought he was going to win. That was 150 odd there. Now, obviously, there's a lot of water under the bridge. I think 140 is a reasonable mark for him, to be honest. I fancied him a bit last year for the Fox Hunters as well. And no disrespect to David Maxwell, because he's got bigger bollocks than I have, but other jockeys are going to be much better on him. And again, no offence to Chelida or Chelelda, however we say it, much better jockeys can go on him. And better ground will see this horse a million times better light. Now, I know he handled the heavy when it was the Ultima before, but I think now he probably wants a little bit better ground, just being a little bit older and doesn't want it to be as taxing. So I really, really, really like Shantou Flyer for the Kim Muir. And obviously, you would want to be potentially putting a few darts in these sorts of races. Do you think Run Wild Fred deserves to be where he is in the market? But Shantou Flyer be one I'm fairly keen on in this. When we're looking just at some of those Irish runners, Run Wild Fred is the one towards the head of the market here. Mount Ida, another one of Gordon's. We've got to get a little bit further down before we start looking at some of the Irish horses for this race. Not saying that they're not without a chance, but it makes you realise here that you've only got a couple of horses you need to see what their mark's going to be. It wouldn't take very long to go through this one. And then of the British, you want to get yourself a bit of a shortlist. Shantou Flyer's got to be well up there for anyone's shortlist. Proper chance that horse has got. We'll quickly do Fridays because banging up to the hour now, aren't we? The County, the 2 mile race, and then the Martin Pipe, Plotty McPlot. Martin Pipe, you saw last year I put up in Indefatigable as the lively outsider. You can wait till the day and pick a 40-1 winner, can't you? So it's not all about it. Although I was big on Colin of Fire like everyone else was, and possibly would have won, wouldn't he? Never mind. So the County Hurdle is going to be interesting. Saudia getting the entry in is really nice because I like Saudia as a horse, and it depends. Like high rated and good horses do run really well in here. What they're going to do with his mark again remains to be seen. But he's the sort of horse I would suggest if he stays on his Irish mark or even goes up 1 or 2 pounds, I'd be fairly happy to say that's an okay mark. Now, I know he's done nothing this season, but it's probably a bit hard for me to say nothing. There's Leopardstown Run. If you watch it back, all the way up until pretty much the last couple, like he travelled quite nicely into it, to be fair. We get a bit of bounce factor sometimes with horses. He was pants behind Honeysuckle After, like real bad. But, again, look, Soonese, like they went easy enough on him. So I wondered, 2 runs, get him in at Cheltenham. Like this horse, without doubt, like I don't think it's debatable. If he'd have stayed sound, and I know he hasn't, if he stayed sound and was running as he was doing, he would have beaten Espoir de Land that day. We know how good Espoir de Land is. Like this horse I don't think many people would argue, this horse could be a 160s horse. So if you can get over here in and around those mid 150s, I'll be semi-interested in. But he would be punty, and then given the price, if he's that short, taken into consideration, you're assuming that they've used those 2 runs to bring him forward, and he wasn't really trying those days. Then it's very like pinch of salty in it. Like you'd want a bit more juice in the price, I'd suggest. Felix de Gea will be interesting coming here. Obviously didn't run so well in the Supremia, but then went and dotted up at Aintree. Now tactics are very pivotal to a horse like Felix de Gea. He needs to be out dictating. This ride by Jack, like he sent him out and then he calmed him down and then he tried to go on again. It was weird. Did it on debut as well, I think. And then the Nomi race was just never jumping that day. So back over hurdles is definitely the right move of him. He's 151 Irish mark again. Be nice and just give him a few pounds. Like 155, I'd be happy to think he could be competitive off of it. The thing is, this classical dream race here, they just didn't make enough use of him. Like there, you can see mid division now. It's a big field handicap. Whether he's going to get away with it at Cheltenham, I don't know. But you'd think if they put Felix de Gea handy, because they've been trying to get him to settle by the looks of it, they're trying to get him in front and then getting covered up by a few horses. They put him handy. I reckon he'd have a spit of a squeak. So you've already heard me pinch it in there. Anything sub 155, Felix de Gea stays on the shortlist, and then we'd revisit after that. Pictorial will be interesting. I think Nichols has suggested that he's going to come here. There's a few horses again that would be potentially interesting depending on where they go. But the County Hurdle's quite a nice race. The better class horses do quite well in here. So don't be afraid of something that might look like it's a bit high mark. Like the good horses do tend to come to the top when it's the 2 mile races. But again, there could be horses further down that are semi-interesting. Blue Lord, Willie Mullins has said he's going to go Supreme with him. I think a lot of people think this horse has got a chance in the Supreme, and then off the back of that, they'd be saying he's got a real chance in a County Hurdle. Depends what they do with his mark. Like I'd imagine they're going to give him. They can't give him much more than mid 140s, and I don't even think he really deserves that. But if he was low 140s, I think that would swerve him towards a County. If he was mid 140s, which he I don't know, maybe deserves to get because of that run behind Appreciate, like you'd put him £5 or £6 behind him, maybe. If he's like 145-ish, they'll go Supreme. If he's sub 145, they'll probably come here. If he got, depends how light he is, depends on whether I'd give him a chance in here. But there's a few that will be interesting to see what they do with him. Really, I think Eclair de Bofu, sorry, has been confirmed as coming here. I think I'm sure it's bigger than 16s, but like dodgy season this season, granted. But going back here, when you look at that Grand Annual run last year, that was 149-ish. Hurdle mark over in Ireland, admittedly, and he's been pants-ish, 135. Like, what's that? How can a handicapper put this horse much more than 135 anyway? And I think it's fair to agree he's probably shone for going over a fence. His best form has literally just been over fences, but it's got to be better than 140 over hurdles, and he's surely over here. So 140 or less, Eclair de Bofu would be the interesting too. Right, we're going to just get done with the Martin Pipe. There's not really a lot we talk about in here that most people won't have already thought about, but there will be one horse, another one on my horses to follow list. I won't bother to bore you with the spiel that I wrote about it, but I was expecting this horse to be plotted for a handicap hurdle by getting his mark reduced. They didn't. They went over fences, so we'll just have to see what the British handicapper does. But again, with the UK tax, the horse is Fleur. I think he's probably still a little bit too high. Like I think he's probably like mid 140s would be my ceiling on him. And this is where I thought over in Ireland they might keep him over hurdles for a little bit, get that mark down, and then try and exploit it, like get him down to like 138 or something. Now, again, given the fact of what he's done here, I'm not sure how they can really want to punish him in terms of the UK tax. Now, they might just be lazy and just chuck a couple of pounds on anything, but I think he's one of those that if he snuck in anything less than £3 of an increase, he'd be still very, very interesting for me. I'd expect that he should be getting £5 just for the fact that the UK handicapper, I think, might be quite lazy with this horse because it's novice hurdle form, a season of chasing, and they're going to have expected sort of normal progression, just full stop. And then that Racing Post rating there on his last run sort of spanner in the works for him, doesn't it? That these two performances here, getting a hiding by good horses, which is the right way to do things. You want to try and get the mark dropped. Well, over here it is anyway. But then putting in that effort there makes you just wonder whether they will hike him up. He'd be an interesting one. He's a massive price. We'll see. There'll be plenty in here that will be interesting, plenty that will be on people's short lists. You just have to. I'll leave it to you guys to look at it, but it is worth looking at these marks and just giving yourself a bit of a feeling of what you think they could be. Now, Grand Parody hacked up the other day. 145 is the ceiling for this race. Based on that last run and the fact that he's beaten horses that were rated quite high, although wrongly in my opinion, I just worry about how high they're going to make him. But if Grand Parody snuck in, if he didn't exceed the 145, proper chance. But I feel like he's probably going to be rated a little bit too high for it. Champagne Gold ran well at the Dublin Racing Festival. Volcano's a nice, interesting horse. Man like Farouk Delan, I don't know whether he's had a bit of a niggle or not. Craig Niche is in here. Didn't mention him in the Coral Cup, did I? But potentially could be Coral Cup bound or could be one that's in here. There's a few nice, interesting horses. Again, it's just going to be driven by what the marks are. But the ones that tend to be towards the head of the market are rightfully so. So we'll see what their marks are. And then, like I say, Indefatigable last year was 40 is a big price. That form was boosted by Dame de Compagnie. We've got this race, the last race of the festival. So there will be form lines that work in with these horses. So again, when I'm talking about assessing what you think their marks should be, I said this right at the beginning. You'll get a handle on, if you think a horse should go up £7, the handicapper only puts him up £2 on the Irish mark to UK mark, and then that horse still gets beat. You thought it was £5 well in, you were probably wrong in the way you assessed the race. And then if you go back and see that that form of that race hasn't worked out as well as you thought it had, then, you know, it makes you realise that, here we go, we'll come back with the face. It makes you realise that maybe your assessment of that particular race wasn't so good. But again, on the opposite side of it, if you've been overly harsh on a race and the form starts to stack up, as it gets later into the week, some of those form lines and clues might be able to help you out. So, not really sure what people were expecting this to be like. This has gone almost as I was expecting, balmy waffling, a little bit less than I would have liked. But like I say, once the weights are out, and me and Jamie get together, we will talk about these horses next week. We'll do a proper preview of every race. We'll talk about the horses, the shortlist, what we like. I'll reveal to you the marks I've given of horses that I think are okay in. I'm not like suggesting that I'm going to go through every single Irish horse and I'm going to look at their mark. I'm just going to try and hand pick a few of them, and only in some races, like some races where there's too many of them to go through, I might hand pick a couple that I want to look at. And as I say, there's some races that I just find, just like with the Grand Daniel, I haven't got an opinion in it. I'd rather just look after the handicapper's made his effort, rather than being so keen that I've got someone on my short list that I'd rather make my mark first. So, yeah, I think, oh, there we go. I left you on the double screen. Never mind. That was the OBS software we used to do this. So yeah, going to wrap it up now because I've been on here for long enough. Handicap stuff will be coming out next week. I've got a preview that I'm doing tomorrow night with Scotty Rudderham from Festival Focus. That won't be going out live. We'll edit that and we'll put it out after. Loads of stuff that's coming up. I'm not trying to swamp it with too much bits, but all your handicap fans, anything